Thank you for joining us today. Today's webinar is going to be on exercise order and why it is important. So we'll talk about some of the things that we do here at Power 4 Fitness to order exercises, but back it up with the science. So I'm joined by Elsa Clark, who is studying exercise science at Florida Gulf Coast University, and she's interning with me, but she is also studying for really one of the hardest strength and conditioning tests that's out there. So once you graduate from an accredited program in exercise science, movement science, kinesiology, you can take what's called the CSCS. And Elsa is studying for that currently. And she put together this wonderful PowerPoint for us that we're going to just kind of walk you through, and I'll talk about some of the things that I see with clients and some of the things that that Elsa's been picking up along the way through her reading as well. So thank you for joining us, Elsa. And
Thanks for having me.
Together. So we wanted to start off basically what is exercise order. So Elsa, kind of walk us through this and why it's important to how you're feeling, what order you should pick from a day-to-day basis, but also what order you should put your exercises in based on the time of the year as well.
Yeah, so whenever you're working out, I think the primary thing you're trying to avoid is reducing injury. I mean, any exercise that you do, there's a possibility of injury, especially with, higher lifting exercises, heavier lifting, such as power. You're doing hang cleans or power jerks, and you could miss the bar and, be out for a season. So it's really important to know what exercises you're doing and what exercise order you're doing. So as we go through this PowerPoint, it'll talk a little bit about that. But power exercises should always be done first. They're the highest fatigue-based exercises, so you're going to finish those and just feel a little drained. And it's important to give yourself ample rest between sets, and make sure that you're doing the proper number of reps as well. Because if you do too many at one time, then you won't be able to finish the rest of your workout. So with any exercise, it's just important to take into consideration what that exercise is, what other exercises you plan to do. So as you're going through a workout, you don't want to just try to think of it off the top of your head. It's really important to go ahead and plan it out, and to plan it out according to the following slides, based upon what I've researched. It's really important to not overuse muscles. So if you're going to be going through the workout, you really want to try to alternate lower and upper body in different circuits, try to alternate pushing and pulling in different planes of motion, just to make sure that you're reaching all body parts and strengthening all forms of your body.
Yeah, and I would say one of the biggest pitfalls that I see when players get into golf fitness is they end up doing basically what we'd call like a body weight or bodybuilding program, where it's maybe one day you're going in and hitting the bis and tris or back and bis, and then it's chest and tris the next day, and then maybe legs, and then you just cycle back through that, because that's what everybody kind of sees, and that's what's put out there. But training with us is very different, and I liked how you threw in that power training should be done first, and that's really important, because you don't want to fatigue yourself before you're putting weight up into the air that's heavy, but you're doing that with speed. So you want to make sure that form is really spot on, but you haven't wasted any of that speed initially, because you'll get more gains if you're doing those power activities first.
Right.
Typically, we'll just do maybe max 6 repetitions with a drill, because after that we start to get into the aerobic cycle of the activity, and then we've really kind of blown through that power phase. It becomes less anaerobic, which is a power drill, and more aerobic. So when we move on here, we talk about that first, and then power is something that maybe you've seen in our classes, but is kind of the last line of what we offer at Par 4 Fitness in the perform section of the program. So it's important that when you get to the power exercises, you are doing those first, but then also having the foundation and function and the strength to handle the speed, because otherwise you're layering on speed on top of dysfunction, as we say at TPI and some of the other courses that I've been through. So very, very important. But walk us through, say we've got through the function and the strengthen phase. Here's some exercises that you could do that also kind of walk us through in your perform phase.
Yeah, so in our perform phase, we usually try to do a couple different circuits. And over the past couple days, we've been putting these exercises in the third or fourth circuit, which kind of contradicts what we just said, how, power exercises should be first. But in the way that we're doing power exercises, we're not doing a lot of weight. I'm using an umbrella. Others are using a golf club. So you're really not stressing the muscles there. But if you were to go through and watch our performance phase, we do a really good job of breaking down the movement. So we start off with the first part of the hang clean. So you're really focused on extending your body. We're starting out with the umbrella. For me, it's usually hanging right above my knees. And then I just try to feel a lot of extension. So my knees straightening, my back, my hips moving forward, my back coming up. And I really just try to bring the umbrella up to my chest, on my toes. And so that's just like the first movement that we go through. We usually try to do about 5 of those. And from there, you move into the catch. So when I was training in the exercise science program, they like to refer to it as catching the voodoo, because the weight kind of disappears and you don't really know where it goes, and then you catch it again. So you catch it, you're extended up at the top, and then you kind of toss it up and catch it under you. So it's a little bit different when you have a barbell or when you have weight on it. You'll be able to feel more of that voodoo, as they refer to it as. So that's more of the second part, the catching. And then we would go into the push jerk, where you've caught it and you're pushing up with the barbell and kind of throwing that weight up over your head. And I remember, being in the exercise science class, and they really stressed the importance of safety, knowing where the bar is, being really aware of what you're catching and when you're catching it. So like I said, in our perform class, we're doing this more because at the end of our class, because it is a more advanced movement, but we're not really stressing the body that much with the weight that we're using.
Right, and when you talk about power, it's strength times speed, right? So we're doing it fast as possible, but we're not having that intensity of strength that you would say an Olympic lifter would have doing these clean and jerks with 500 pounds.
Exactly.
So it's very different, and the body's not going to be nearly as stressed as those athletes would be. So if you're doing a lot more weight or going up in weight, as you get more comfortable with these motions, then you want to significantly extend out your rest periods to even 15, 20 minutes in between sets is what it takes to get back the potential to go through that as quickly as possible again. Otherwise, it's not going to be as fast. It's not going to be as really refined movement-wise as you would see if you waited longer. So this is where we'll really see a lot of recovery. So you might feel like you're doing a lot of sitting around, but that's a good thing. So we went into talking about if we didn't incorporate power exercises, these are some of the things that you might do if you're going through some strength training. So go ahead and kind of walk us through that order that you found, Elsa.
So if you're not really doing, like I said, the cleans and snatches and jerks, you should really focus on the larger muscle areas. So like listed here, we have chest, shoulder, back, hip, thigh. And then following that, you would do the assistance exercises. So we're working the larger muscles first and then transferring into the smaller muscles. So a prime example of that, as a student athlete, we go to workouts in the morning. And our trainer Pops does a really good job of organizing our workouts in this way. Because we're golfers, we don't really do a lot of power exercises. It's not really something that's beneficial to us, and it's more of a risk of injury exercise. So our first exercise is usually some type of squat. It could be a goblet squat, a trap bar, or it's a lunge of some sort with a twist or some type of weight that we're squatting. And so this type of exercise really focuses on the larger muscle areas, and then we move into the smaller ones such as bicep curls, tricep kickback, and we usually finish with an abdominal session with different crunches, V-ups, pike ups, different things like that. So it's really important. You want to work those larger muscles first. They are bigger, so they have more capacity. They're able to withstand more weight compared to exercises that would be done with smaller muscle areas.
Yeah, and how I usually organize it would be squat patterns or hinging patterns, and then we're going through push and pulls in the studio or at a facility with a cable or resistant bands, and then lifts and chops, and then getting down into those smaller areas that you can target. So again, kind of like a bodybuilding type approach to things here, but we want to fatigue those larger areas first before we start to get down into the smaller muscle groups that are synergistic with those bigger muscle groups. So I like the alternation of the upper and lower body exercises, especially in improving recovery. So if we're training hard, say we're in an off-season program and the reps out on the golf course aren't quite as high, but the off-course work is higher at the time. This is a great way to do it. So I also said if the training session is shorter in duration, this mechanism minimizes the length of rest required, and we can start to alternate those upper and lower portions of the body. So what I'll do if we're needing a rest period is throw in some of our functional movements, which would include like pelvic tilts, hip rotations, torso turns, shoulder external rotation, just things to fill up the time if you're waiting for that recovery period to expire. And then it just allows us to move forward with the training session, and we've done something to fill up that time. Then you can grab some water. We can do like a quick little movement circuit, and walk us through that last bullet point there too, Elsa.
So if we're having minimal rest time, like you said, with the quick grab water, shake it out a little bit, then we call this circuit training. And so in our performance-based class, I consider it a form of circuit training just because we usually do about 4 different series with 3 exercises in each. Sometimes a couple more, it just kind of depends on what the exercises are. But they're very fast-paced exercises, and then we have a little bit of rest time. So one circuit that we do is a jump circuit. So we start with, hang on one second.
Joys of being at home.
Sorry about that. So we do a jump circuit, and like today's jump circuit, I did 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off. So I did jumping jacks for 20 seconds and then 20 seconds off. I did skaters for 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off, and then we did reverse lunge jumps, 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off. So you're allowing yourself ample rest because with jumps, you do fatigue a little bit more easily. So you might need a little bit longer rest, but the 20 to 30 seconds is really the maximal rest time that we try to do.
Yeah, and I know you kind of went into this a little bit with the lower body and upper body, but you can also do the same with the push and pulls, because the synergistic muscles are a bit different with the push and pull exercises, and we can make them really recover while we're doing something else. So say we're doing a cable pull, and we can go right into like a fly or a lift or a chop pattern right afterward, and you can make that more of like a circuit style type training.
Right.
that you can go through as well.
And then there are times where you can do both. Like today in our workouts, we had a row and a push. So in today's exercise, we did a push and a pull. And so it was row with one arm, push with the other. So we did a great job of incorporating both pushing and pulling exercises.
Yeah, so if you're going through your program, you're figuring out how to piece that together when you're on your own. If you're not using our template, then this is something that you can use to basically use as a template for your own training. So what happens if I don't alternate these push and pull exercises, and I just do bicep curls, pull-ups, cable rows, row and reaches? What happens to the muscle fiber and the tissue there?
So if we don't, then over time we're going to fatigue more easily. So we're not going to get in as many reps. We're not going to be able to go for as long as we originally intended. So it's like if you shoot for 9 the first time. Today we were doing bicep curls in our strengthen session, and the goal was to get 9 curls every time. But we're doing heavier weight, and we only gave that arm a smaller bit of rest. So over time, as we continue to do that same weight, it's going to be harder and harder in order to maintain those number of repetitions. So over time, we're going to compromise that number.
So what if we say we do these in succession? This would be what you'd call like a superset style training. So you're working through an exercise where in this example you may be doing 10 bicep curls followed by 10 tricep push downs. So you're working these like push-pull patterns and alternating them. And there are some benefits to that. So you're getting your workout in more efficiently, so you're not spending as much time in the gym, which is always great. We're strapped for time on a daily basis. Although right now it seems like we've got all the time in the world. But what also we can do is we're going to elevate heart rate. We're going to get that metabolism raised throughout the rest of the days. And if you can do supersets and program those into your routines, then that's also going to allow you to burn through more calories throughout the day and extend that period that your metabolism is raised. So we're going to raise that basal metabolic rate, which will allow you to burn more calories because we've got more muscle to do that. That muscle is going to be much more involved on a cellular level in demanding more what we call ATP, which is broken down from glycogen in the body and used as energy. So when we do that, we're able to increase that metabolic rate. And that's why hypertrophy is such a big thing. And as we're aging, that tends to get limited. We have sarcopenia, where the muscle starts to atrophy. We have less muscle fiber, less tissue there. So the metabolic rate goes down as well. So some things to think about as we're going through our lives here as well. And some cons that you said were to just make sure that you're doing the right things and you're consulting with a proper professional on the form and function So our number one job is to reduce the risk of injury and not have anything bad happen to a client, because that puts them off the golf course. They can't come see us, and then we're stuck managing something that should have really been avoided in the first place, right?
Exactly.
Let's move forward to a compound set training and just kind of walk us through what that looks like. So we've already gone through the circuit, we've gone through supersets. Here's compound sets.
So in this example, we're doing 2 different exercises to stress the same muscle group. It's like the example showed right there. You can do a biceps curl with a barbell, and you can do a biceps curl with a dumbbell. They're 2 very different forms of equipment. With a barbell, both hands are sharing the stress of that weight, whereas with a dumbbell, each hand has its own form of stress. So while it is stressing the same muscle group, it does still increase your level of strength, because you're changing the lever, you're changing what your base of support is, how much base of support you need in order to lift that object. But you have to be a very experienced athlete in order to do this. I think people who are just beginning should not try this exercise, just because it takes training and it takes time in order to understand which exercises can be performed in succession like that, and which ones okay, I'm going to do barbell today, dumbbell tomorrow. So it's understanding which exercises are going to be most beneficial to each individual athlete.
Right, so we're making gains, and part of managing injuries as well is managing stress on the body. So if we're over stressing and we're really sore the next day, and say we can't walk up the stairs or sit down for 2 to 3 days, and that doesn't really do a lot for us in benefiting your performance on and off the golf course, especially during a tournament week. So we'll talk about progressions in a next webinar, but that's something that we want to take into account. And also said we should have a lot of experience before we go through something like this. Some things that I'll sometimes throw into compound set training would be like a tricep push down and then straight arm pull downs right afterwards. So it's more fatigue, it's more stress on the area, but you're doing it in a way that's limiting the overall stress and soreness level that the client might experience. So a lot of my training is through the Titleist Performance Institute, going through the fitness, the medical, power, and junior. So they're big on push, pulls, hinging, basically challenging strength in different ways. Their education platform is based on many different backgrounds. So their advisory board is strength coaches, it's chiropractors, it's physical therapists, it's golf coaches, it's a little bit of everything. So basically what we find in terms of strength testing is we do a push and a pull, and then we do a lower body lunge test. So you're basing that off of perception of an 8-rep max, and you get that objective data, and you can use that for improvement. Also, what I'll do for testing is obviously the TPI test, but we'll also go through body track testing, see how much force you can put into the ground. And then we'll also do usually a trap bar 10-rep max, and that's always after we've added that layer of function in, so I'm comfortable loading the body that's in front of me. Then that's not something that I rarely ever do with a new client. We're always making sure that they're functioning really well. So one thing that you can do would be, if you're looking at power, would be 3 sets of 5 at 85% load. Now you have to know, okay, what's my 100% load to know that number. So this again would be our higher level of training, and then you'd have a longer rest period in between. So something that we can go through would be a press, a row, squat, and then you're going through some lower body drills there as well, just to kind of throw into the mix.
But I really like how this workout maintained the rules that we said a little bit earlier, with alternating pushing and pulling, upper body and lower body. With the press, obviously you're going to be pushing. With the row, you're going to be pulling. So they're doing, 2 sets of upper body push and pull, and then they switch to lower body. And then they switch back to a press, and then back to a lower body. So it's really nice to see that, such a high company like TPI is able to follow these rules as well.
Sure. Yeah, and it's something that that I know they take a lot of pride in. Now, they do a lot of education, and then they leave it up to the professional to basically prescribe what exercise that they like, because it's exercise is movement, and you're stressing areas that are targeted. So it's thought out, it's planned. TPI offers the model, along with our education together, as the model to apply exercise and rehab techniques, in my case, appropriately. So it's just a matter of stressing the body in the right manner, but allowing it to function best. And that's something that we also will look at too, would be the FMS, or the functional movement screening. So that testing is basically 7 different motions, and we're looking at those foundational or fundamental movement patterns, and ideally they're not in pain. If they do have pain, then we're in what we call the select functional movement assessment. So at the bottom we would have that SFMA, then we would have the FMS, which we're going to talk about now, and then that top level of the pyramid would be our sport-specific screening. So for us, that's the TPI. That's the top level of the pyramid that we're looking at. So the FMS is helpful because it can show us underlying risks of potential injury. Now, we know golf is a non-contact sport, and we know injuries are going to happen on and off the playing field for football and hockey, for example. But if we can do this with combine athletes, then it's easily applicable to, okay, what are the odds that this player is going to get injured throughout the course of the season? Is it something that we should really take into account and make sure that they're functioning at a very high level, which is ideal? So a strength coach for that organization that's doing a good job is going to take into account these numbers and program that athlete to function better before they're getting into some of the stuff that we talked about before. Because we know it's sexy at the high levels of athletic performance to be doing a lot of weight at high velocity and getting into some of those things, but you can get injured off the field as well. So we just want to make sure that whatever you're doing, is that number one role is not to injure the athlete. So there is a risk reward with some of those higher level exercises, like the cleans, the snatches, and the jerks. But if we know what they're functioning at the baseline, then we can provide a more effective but foundational base for them. Anything you wanted to add on that?
No? Well, I mean, yeah. I think the functional movement screening, like you said, it's a beneficial tool that can be used in pretty much any sport. And like we said earlier, the primary goal here is to reduce the risk of injury for the athlete. So I think this mechanism is really helpful in determining the athlete's limitations and the athlete's level of movement, so that then we can program exercises that can help improve this and help them become a better athlete.
Excellent. Thank you for joining me, Elsa. I hope that you as clients can use this and understand why we program things the way that we do. But you can also take this forward and use it for your own programming. So this is meant to be educational and to give you some things to consider moving forward, because we want you to come see us, but we also want you to learn how to do the right things. And then you're able to communicate that to your friends, your family, and it just uplifts everyone. So thank you, Elsa.
Thank you.